Simulan mong abutin ang iyong pangarap na magbibigay dangal sa iyong bukas. Ang suliranin, hindi laging nandyan, dapat mong harapin. Kami iyong kasama sa bawat takin, magkaakbay nating lulutasin. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, ang boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, ikaw lagi ang bida. Ang mga aral ay ginintuang atin ng bawat guro na siyang gagabay sa iyong pagkamulat. Naway umukit ito sa iyong isipan, maging mapanuri, sundin ng wasto at nararapat. Kagandahang asal ang ipakita, ipadama ang pusong may malasakit. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, ang boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, ikaw lagi ang bida. Sakali mang tayo'y subukin ng unos, ating haharapin ng walang takot. Sasamahan ka ni Fernan at Dino, ang bagong barkada mo. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, edukasyon mo'y sigurado na. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, edukasyon mo'y sigurado na.
Fernandino Teens TV.
Bakit kayo hinihingal, Nan?
Nasiraan kami ng sasakyan.
Naflatan kayo?
Hindi.
Ano?
Ayaw umandar kanina ng sasakyan namin. Ini-start ni Papa. Ayaw umandar.
Baka wala ng karga ang battery.
Oo, bakit mo alam?
Natutuhan ko yan sa Automotive. Mabuti pa, panoorin natin si Sir para mas maintindihan natin kung paano nag-i-start ang isang sasakyan. Tara, let's G!
Good day, Fernandino Teens. Welcome to Fernandino Teens TV Season 2. I am Sir Jerome Lusung, and I will be your TLE teacher for today. I hope that you are doing well right now. Today's discussion is entitled Components of an Automotive Ignition System. Are you ready, Fernandino Teens? Before we begin our discussion, let us read our objectives for today. Objective number 1. Compare electronic ignition and mechanical ignition system. Objective number 2. Identify and explain the use of the components of an automotive ignition system. And objective number 3. Appreciate the importance and functions of ignition system components. Fernandino Teens, let us play a short game before we go to the discussion proper. You may type your answers on the comment section or write them on a sheet of paper. Tips: the pictures we are going to guess are parts of ignition system. Try to guess the names of each picture. Are you ready? First picture. Did you guess right, Fernandino teens? If you answered battery, then you are right. Amazing! Keep it up. Next picture. Second picture. Did you get it? If you answered ignition switch, then you are. Third picture. If you wrote ignition resistor, that is correct. Very good, Fernandino teens. Keep going. Let us have the fourth picture. If you answered ignition coil, you got it right again. Well done. Next picture. Let us have the next picture. If you answered distributor, that is correct. Amazing, Fernandino teens. You are doing great. How about the sixth picture? If you answered rotor, then you are right. Good job, Fernandino teens. Let us have the seventh picture. If you wrote breaker points, amazing, Fernandino teens. Next picture. If you answered condenser, right on target. Keep it up, Fernandino teens. Let us have the last picture. If you answered spark plugs, that is right. Very good, Fernandino teens. I hope you have guessed most of the pictures. Alright, Fernandino teens. We will be discussing the difference between electronic ignition and mechanical ignition, as well as the parts and functions of the ignition system after a short break. Stay tuned!
Ang Schools Division Office City of San Fernando, Pampanga ay kaisa ng Department of Education sa pagsasagawa ng mga proyekto at programa na tumutugon sa mga pangangailangan ng mga mag-aaral. Inilunsad ang Division Call Center for Tutors and Guidance Counselors upang magbigay ng educational at psychological assistance sa mga mag-aaral, magulang at stakeholders ng division. Kaya, kung may nais kayong itanong tungkol sa pag-aaral, maaaring magpadala ng mensahe sa Division Call Center for Tutors and Guidance Counselors Facebook page o tumawag sa mga numero na makikita sa ibaba ng inyong screen tuwing Lunes hanggang Biyernes sa ganap na alas 8 ng umaga hanggang alas 6 ng gabi. Maaari rin kayong sumangguni sa ating guidance counselors na nagbibigay ng guidance and counseling services. Lahat ng inyong ibabahagi ay mananatiling confidential. Ang nasabing programa ay nagsisilbing daan upang malaman ang feedbacks ng stakeholders para matulungan ang ating divisyon na mapagbuti pa ang mga sumusunod na programa. Ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Tumawag na sa aming mga numero o bumisita na sa aming Facebook page at magpadala ng inyong mga katanungan.
Fernandino Teens TV.
Welcome back to Fernandino Teens. A while back, I presented to you pictures about the parts of the ignition system. At this point, I will show you the difference between an electronic ignition system and a mechanical ignition system. Let us start by studying about electronic ignition system. Electronic ignition will not burn under normal use. Electronic ignition develops up to 30,000 volts at the spark plug when a car is running at 10 meter per hour up to 100 meter per hour. Condenser is no longer necessary and is removed. Electronic ignitions also have dwell. Now, how does that compare with the mechanical ignition system? First, condenser can degrade or fail and will be needing replacement. Mechanical ignition is not reliable. Distributor COM requires periodic lubrication. Remember, mechanical ignition systems are comprised primarily of the ignition switch, the ignition coil, spark plugs, and the distributor. While in an electronic system, you still have a distributor, but the points have been replaced with a pickup coil, and there is an electronic ignition control. The advantage of electronic ignition is that it has fewer moving parts, it requires low maintenance, it has less generated emission, and is more efficient. This time, we are going to learn about the parts of an ignition system. Let us start. The first one is battery. Battery supplies current to starter motor in order to crank the engine. It also supplies the required electric current to the ignition system and other electrical components. Take note, Fernandino teens, your car battery provides the sap of electricity needed to put the electrical components to work. It also converts chemical energy into the electrical energy that powers your car and delivers voltage to its starter. The second part is ignition switch. It is a key-operated main power switch that opens and closes the circuit that supplies current to the ignition and other electrical systems. Furthermore, the ignition switch is partly of an assembly or system that includes the ignition lock cylinder. The third part is the ignition resistor. It is a resistor connected into the ignition primary circuit to reduce battery voltage to the coil during engine operation. Moreover, it reduces the failure risk of the ignition coil. When the starter motor cranks the engine, the ignition ballast resistor helps to reduce the coil voltage and coil current. The next part is the ignition coil. Ignition coil is a step-up transformer that increases battery voltage into thousands of volts. In addition, all ignition systems for modern petrol engines use ignition coils for the same basic function. That is, to create the high voltage required to produce a spark at the spark plug. Also, we have the distributor. It is a mechanically operated rotary switch causing the contact points to make and break the circuit. It distributes high voltage surge via the rotor to the corresponding spark plug in proper sequence. Remember, Fernandino teens, the distributor's main function is to route secondary or high voltage current from the ignition coil to the spark plugs in the correct firing order and for the correct amount of time. Another part is the rotor. It is the rotating parts installed on the top portion of the distributor shaft. It distributes high voltage from the ignition coil center cable to different spark plugs. Significantly, rotors are designed to turn motion or kinetic energy into thermal energy or heat. For the seventh part, we have breaker points. A breaker point opens and closes the primary circuit to build up and collapses the magnet lines of force in an ignition coil. Remember, Fernandino teens, under such operating conditions, the points are closed for approximately 0.005 of a second for each spark created. The next part is the condenser. It is connected across contact points to prevent arcing and burning. It also provides the storage of electricity when breaker points open. Basically, it is a heat exchanger. It is located at the front of the vehicle. Also, we have the distributor cap. It is the top cover of distributor assembly that prevents dirt or any particles from entering the delicate parts. The distributor cap is the cover that protects the distributor's internal parts and holds the contacts between internal rotor and the spark plug wires. Another part is high tension wires. It serves as a passage of high voltage to the spark plugs. Take note, high tension wire is the wire used for transmission of electrical energy having high voltage over long distances. The next part is spark plug. It is a device in the system that creates spark on the gap. Your spark plugs provide the trigger that ignites the air or fuel mixture, creating the explosion which makes your engine produce power. And lastly, we have vacuum advancer. It advances the timing just to maintain the spark at top dead center. It also helps the engine run cooler. Alright, Fernandina teens, those are the components of an automotive ignition system. After the break, we will be learning how these components are interconnected to complete an automotive ignition system.
Maya po oras kaya kayo, Fernandinos. Ako pala ay Elwin Arl Serrano ng City Tourism Office ng Siyudad San Fernando. Ngayong bulan na ini, pagmasusyantaya ang National Heritage Month na ating temang Victory and Humanity, Upholding Filipino Heritage and Identity. Kambena nini, metong karang aktibidades na ng siyudad, apin ng launching ng bayong Heritage Passport. Yung Heritage Passport, apin ng metong karing proyekto ng kaya katamong siyudad, yung pamanamuna ng Mayor Edwin D. Santiago. Anong nuka rin makalagelangan ding eganagan ng heritage sites, heritage structures, na akit tamo kin kay katamong heritage district. Makakayado din kini, ding importansya da ding mapil na tradisyon kay ni syudad, kalupa ng pamangawang parol, ang po yung pamangalesa. May aw siyang heritage passport, uling atin kang dapat gawan, anong nukaran puntalan mo lading at yung passport, at saka ka mag-selfie. Kay ba't kanta, palto making tourism office, at mamiyalang sticker ka rin eganagan ng apuntulan mong lugar. At timong may ngari ang tutong passport. Balo mingeni, panahon na ini, etamo makain bisa lumal, uli na ng COVID-19 pandemic. Kaya naman kimbanwa nga ini, agkatan ko ding bikers tamo, edad 18 hanggang 50, imbis na lumaot kayo po, di na nyo lang dita ka oras di kaya katamong heritage structures, kaya ni syudad. Anya naman karing mumu ng 50 bikers ang makayari kaya katamong heritage passport, midinan lang premium only San Fernando loot bag. Inggawan nyo mo bakanta makapag-register, munta kayo mismo opisina na ng City Tourism, ng munisipyo, at saka kayo magdalang metong valid ID. Kabinan kaya kayong heritage passport, ating makasipit ang instruction nung nano pa ing dapat gawan. Anya naman ka rin hanggang kapadyakin, nanano ko pa, tara na!
Fernandino Teens TV.
Welcome back, Fernandino teens. Before we proceed, let us enumerate again the components of an ignition system. We have the battery, ignition switch, ignition resistor, ignition coil, distributor, rotor, breaker points, condenser, distributor cap, high tension wires, spark plug, and vacuum advancer. This time, we are going to learn how these are interconnected to complete an automotive ignition system. watch this video presentation. Here, we can see the complete diagram of the ignition system. When the ignition switch is turned on, current from the battery flows to the ignition coil. Then, current flows through the primary windings of the ignition coil, where one end is connected to the contact breaker. A cam, which is connected directly to the camshaft, opens and closes the contact breaker point according to the number of engine cylinders. Condenser then absorbs the back of the electromotive force or EMF from the magnetic field, thereby increasing the life of the contact points by reducing the burning of the points. When the cam lobe pushes a circuit breaker switch, the contact breaker point opens, which causes the current from primary circuit to break. Due to the break in the current, an EMF is induced in the secondary windings, having more number of turns than primary, which increases the battery's 12 volts to 22,000 volts. The high voltage produced by the secondary winding is then transferred to the distributor. A rotor inside the distributor rotates according to the ignition time. When the rotor comes exactly in front of the distributor point, the voltage jumps due to the air gap from the rotor to the point. High voltage is then transferred from the distributor to the spark plug terminal via high tension cable. A voltage difference is generated between the central electrode and ground electrode. The voltage continues to transfer through the central electrode, which is still using insulator. When the voltage exceeds the dielectric strength of the gases between these electrodes, the gases are ionized. Due to the ionization, gas becomes a conductor and allows the current to flow through the gap, and the spark is finally produced. And that is how the ignition system works. Since you now have an understanding of the parts and functions of the ignition system, let us try to connect our lesson in science so that you can appreciate the value of the parts of a certain object even more. Every part of the body is important, and each part has a respective function to have a healthy body. Just like in the ignition system, each part is important for you to create an electric spark in the engine combustion chamber at exactly the right time, which will ignite the mixture of petrol and air. Great! We are almost done. Let us evaluate what we have learned for today's lesson when Fernandino Teens TV returns. Stay tuned!
Hindi lamang sa larangan ng pangkabuhayan apektado ang maraming pamilyang Pilipino, kundi maging sa larangan ng pagkatuto ng bawat batang Pilipino. Inilunsad ng siyudad ng San Fernando ang programang North Nurturing Environment and System for Thriving or NEST, isang education community pantry na naglalayon para sa isang malawakang pagtulong, paglantabay at paggabay na ang focus ay ang makapagbigay ng tulong at suporta sa ating mga mag-aaral sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng educational needs gaya na lamang ng school supplies, tutorial sessions, study tips, at iba pang mga pamamaraan na mas lalong makatutulong sa pag-angat ng ating edukasyon. Dahil hindi hadlang ang pandemya sa magandang kinabukasang naghihintay sa ating mga mag-aaral. Sino-sino nga ba ang mga kalahok sa programang ito? Sa pagtutulungan ng ating school administrators, guro, magulang, at iba pang mga miyembro ng ating komunidad gaya ng barangay officials at sangguniang kabataan ay siguradong magiging mas matagumpay ang programang ito. Paano nga ba ang magiging proseso ng naturang programa? Una, magkakaroon tayo ng isang Facebook group, ang Pampanga High School NEST Education Community Pantry na pangungunahan ng Educational Pantry Coordinator. Ang mga magulang, tagapangalaga at mga guro ay ia-add ng ating Educational Pantry members sa Facebook group na ito. Sa page na ito maaaring i-post ng mga magulang at tagapangalaga o sino mang miyembro ng Educational Pantry ang kanilang mga kahilingan o requests. Kailangan ding ilagay ang pangalan ng mag-aaral, grade at section para sa mas agarang aksyon. Oo nga pala, hindi lang requests ang pwedeng i-post. Pwede ring mag-post ang mga nais magbigay ng tulong o mga gustong mag-donate. Sabi nga nila, sharing is caring. Tandaan na ang Facebook group na ito ay pribado at posts na may kaugnayan lamang sa page na ito ang maaaprobahan. Mayroon din palang Google Form na ipamamahagi kung saan maaari nating isumite ang ating requests o kahilingan. Paano naman ang mga walang internet access sa bahay? Huwag mangamba dahil merong mga nakalaang drop boxes ang ating paaralan na kung saan maaaring ihulog ng mga magulang at tagapangalaga ang kanilang requests. Sa mga nais namang mag-donate ng school supplies, maaaring ilagay ang mga ito sa tabi ng drop boxes. Maaari ring mag-donate ng mga kagamitan o cash donation kaakibat ang pagsusumite ng deed of donation form. Pangalawa, mahalaga ang ugnayan ng mga guro at ng mga magulang o tagapangalaga sa programang ito. Gamit ang video calls o chats ay ipahahayag ng mga guro ang adhikain ng programang ito sa mga magulang o tagapangalaga. Maaari ring gawin ang orientation na ito ng face-to-face kasabay ng schedule ng kuhanan ng mga module. Gaya ng nabanggit, hindi lamang mga bagay ang maaaring i-donate. Pwede ring mag-conduct ng tutorial session, study tips, at iba pang mga kagamitan sa pagkatuto gaya ng mga aklat o kaya ay gadgets. Ikatlo, ang requested needs ng ating mga magulang o tagapangalaga ay ililista ng ating NEST focal person. Ang mga coordinator naman ang mag-aayos ng mga ito. Ang advisors ng ating mga mag-aaral, guidance counselor, at iba pang mga guro ay ipaaalam sa ating mga magulang at tagapangalaga ang petsa at oras ng pamimigay ng requested needs na gaganapin sa paaralan. Sabi nga nila, it takes a village to raise a child. Kaya naman aktibo at iba yung pakikilahok ang inaasahan sa pagsasanib puwersa ng paaralan at barangay na siyang tutukoy sa pangangailangan ng bawat Fernandinong mag-aaral at kikilos upang matugunan ito sa tulong at suporta rin ng mga miyembro ng komunidad. Isang malawakang komunidad para sa isang produktibong educational community pantry ay tiyak na lilikha ng iba yung pagkilos upang maging mas magaan at madali ang pagkatuto ng bawat kabataang Fernandino. Kaya naman tandaan, magbigay ayon sa kakayahan, kumuha ayon sa pangangailangan.
Fernandino Teens TV.
You are still tuned in to Fernandino Teens TV. Earlier, we discussed the parts and functions of ignition system. Now, let us find out if you still remember what we just discussed. Let us have a short quiz. Just write the letter of your answers on the comment section or on a piece of paper. Are you ready, Fernandino Teens? Number 1. It is a step-up transformer that increases battery voltage into many thousands of volts. A. Ballast resistor. B. Breaker points. C. Ignition coil. And D. Spark plug. If you answered letter C, then you are correct. Number 2. A type of ignition system that consists of the following parts: breaker points, condenser, springs, lobes, contact set, attaching screws, and plate. A. Breakerless type. B. Breaker point type. C. Capacitive discharge type. And D. Electronic controlled type. If you wrote letter B, then you are right. Number 3. It is a key-operated main power switch that opens and closes the circuit in the ignition and other electrical system. A. Breaker points. B. Ignition relay. C. Ignition switch. And D. Ignition resistor. If you answered letter C, you got it again. Good job! Number 4. The part of the distributor assembly that covers the breaker points and advance mechanism. A. Distributor cap. B. High tension wires. C. Rotor. And D. Shaft. If you wrote letter A, it is correct. And lastly, number 5. The rotary type of distributor assembly that allows distribution of high voltage from the center distributor cap to different spark plugs. A. Distributor cam lobe. B. Distributor drive gear. C. Distributor shaft. And D. Rotor. If you answered letter D, then you are correct. Great job, Fernandino teens. Congratulations, we are done. I hope this learning session has helped you to become familiar with the components of the ignition system. These are the references used in today's learning episode. Always remember to believe in yourself, and anything is possible because God is always with us. Again, this is your TLE teacher for today, Sir Jerome. Thank you for watching and have a good day.
Yun pala ang ignition system ng sasakyan na nakakonect sa battery.
Mahalaga din pala na matutuhan natin ang mga bahagi ng ignition system.
O offer para alam natin kung may problema ba ang isang sasakyan sa pagsuswitch pa lang natin. Ang dami na namang natin natutuhan sa araw na ito. Kaya naman,
Maraming salamat, sir!
Isa na namang makabuluhang talakayan ang ating natunghayan, Fernandino Teens.
Samahan niyo ulit kami dito lang sa Fernandino
Teens
TV,
Season 2,
kung saan ang kabataang Fernandino ay angat sa angking talino.
Bagong umaga, yakapin mo ang bagong pag-asa. Simulan mong abutin ang iyong pangarap na magbibigay dangal sa iyong bukas. Ang suliranin, hindi laging nandyan, dapat mong harapin. Kami iyong kasama sa bawat takin, magkaakbay nating lulutasin. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, ang boses mo ay mahalaga. Dito sa Fernandino Teens TV, ikaw lagi ang bida. Ang mga aral ay ginintuang atin ng bawat guro na siyang gagabay sa iyong pagkamulat. Naway umukit ito sa iyong isipan, maging mapanuri, sundin ng wasto